who are the victims of serious criminal offences.
Question number 8, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Speaker, this question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, does he have any concerns about the public statements of the Secretary to the Treasury? If not, why not?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, generally no, because it is the Treasury Secretary's job to give his best advice and the government then considers that advice. Of course, that does not mean the government always agrees with that advice.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Any question? Can you advise the House as to what Mr McLoof's academic credentials are to lead the public on education reform, such as increasing class sizes?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I don't have the details of Mr McLoof's credentials in the House today. But I point out to the member, I'm sure, as I've been a long-standing observer of this House, and I'm sure he has from within the House, the Treasury Secretaries all the time provide opinion and second opinion and first opinion on government advice, and governments choose, as they do, what to accept and what not to accept.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Was the timing of Mr McLoof's public statements in support of larger class sizes a coincidence, or was Mr McLoof acting as a mouthpiece of this government?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I think the Minister of Finance addressed these issues in the House the other day, and in particular in relation to the timing of that speech. And he was asked at the time, did the Secretary advise him of his intention to give a speech? He responded that he couldn't recall whether he did or not, but he would have given the speech on the basis of evidence that comes out of educational research.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Question. Can you not see a suspicious coincidence between Mr McLoof's policy advice and the National Party's obsession with increasing class sizes, given that the previous Minister of Education touted this policy in 2009?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I'm sure that member is capable of seeing conspiracies in a number of places. I'll point out that Mr McLoof's not the only person that's proposed slight increases in class sizes.
Order. A point of order has been called. The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Speaker, a conspiracy is when two or more agree to break the law. I trust that this member doesn't understand what the word conspiracy means.
No, I think
nothing to do with this question.
I think the member's point of order is reasonably raised. In answering a question, the minister should not imply that the questioner has some conspiracy theory or otherwise. The member would, if the member. I mean, I don't think there's any great need to get too excited about this issue. The member asked a question that I accept had a bit of political loading in it, but some attempt to answer it before alleging a conspiracy theory would be helpful. The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, just point of order.
As a point of order, the Honourable Stephen Joyce.
I just point out that the member actually asked about conspiracy in his question.
That's true. Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. The Right Honourable Winston Peters, I'll hear briefly.
Speaker, my question was that as to whether or not he saw a suspicious coincidence between...
Order.
Mr Speaker,
order.
my Hansard will prove... I've got the quick...
Order. The member resume his seat. Order. Not going to let this carry on. What I'll do to avoid any... Order. The member doesn't grumble away from his seat like that. Order. I'm about to invite the member to repeat his question, so I suggest he have a little more confidence that the Speaker is not unreasonable. The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
I'm so grateful for that reassurance. Mr Speaker, my supplementary question was and is now, can he not see a suspicious coincidence between Mr McLoof's policy advice and the National Party's obsession with increasing class sizes, given that the previous Minister of Education touted this policy in 2009, sans the word conspiracy?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, no, I cannot see a suspicious coincidence. The reality, Mr Speaker, is that any number of people have suggested that a small increase in class sizes is something that might be appropriate. And the example I would give the member is that, in fact, Professor Hattie was on Q&A just this last weekend, I think, saying exactly that.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Does it concern him that the Secretary has publicly dismissed the findings of a report by the Attorney General into his department's mismanagement of the Crown Retail Deposit Scheme, and then refused to conduct or request an inquiry into this mismanagement? If not, why not?
The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Finance, I don't know that I accept the member's characterisation of what Mr Maklouf's done. I think the Treasury takes very seriously its role under the Deposit Guarantee Scheme. What the member doesn't seem to understand is that once the rather drastic decision had to be taken in late 2008 by the previous government to have the Deposit Guarantee Scheme, that it was quite a fraught process all the way through. Well, if a member thinks that not having an extension would have been the answer, well, I think probably what would have happened is that automatically a lot of finance companies would have gone bust at that time.
Question number 9, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Trade and asks, will New Zealand follow Australia and refuse to sign up to the investor-state dispute provisions